Hello, hello. Ooh. All right, how to let that intro music play its way through, guys. Welcome to Cozy Talks Live. All right, looks like we have some residual. Right, here we go, guys. Sorry, it looks like my microphone is deciding to act up just a little bit. Can you guys just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Everything is coming through with the sound. We've got Kim coming in from a frozen tundra in Indiana with her hot tea. We've got Chuck coming in from frigid Wyoming. Let's see, we got Emily from Central PA, Club Soda with Melon Flavor, and Carl saying, "Good morning from Taiwan." Good morning to you, Carl. And I've got my coffee, so I guess I can do it this way as well. Let's see, we got Susan tuning in with Marshall on the lap. Give Marshall a good scrub behind the ears for me. We got Pastor David. Thank you so much for sending me your email, Pastor David. I appreciate hearing the updates and hearing always your commentary. Thank you, Tom, for letting me know because I know sometimes my computer loves to play tricks on me. Never know if it's because the mic isn't working or what's going on. We got Jill coming in on board. Good to see you, Jill. We got Christy from Auburn, Nebraska, drinking wild cherry Pepsi. We got Tana listening in on the YouTube channel with cold Wyoming. Y'all are really in the cold states today. And it's interesting. We got a question referencing just the frigid cold weather. So it'll be interesting to hear if anybody else is experiencing some of these issues as well. We've got Victor coming in also from the YouTube channel, guys. Just as a reminder, I am broadcasting to my Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Instagram page, all under Cozy Talks. We got Dan here from frozen Kansas City with a cherry Pepsi. Y'all are here in like these frozen tundras drinking all these cold drinks, and I'm here in hot, sticky Tampa, Florida, and I got my hot coffee right here. Something ain't right here. Something ain't right. All right, what else we got going on here? Who else we got? We got Krista. Sup, girl? We got Bill coming in with water in his jug. My boy Marine, Jarhead, Benny Cortez coming in from Friesen, Texas. We got Eric. Eric, I hope you're pooping okay. Tom, oh man, it's good to see you, man. Good to see you, Tom. All right, guys, we have a great crew on tonight. I feel like last week was like this huge show, and it took a lot of prep work, a lot of prep work. For those of you who weren't here, I had Dr. Jonathan Forsberg, orthopedic surgeon extraordinaire, again, one of the top orthopedic surgeons I think here in the US. And he was coming to talk to us about his work with osseointegration. And he has a new study that just came out, and it's new in the sense that it was just published, but he and his colleagues have been working on it for the past couple of years. It's a lot of years worth of work and study on osseointegration and the benefits of osseointegration for above and amputees. And we also had my boy Glenn Runyon on board telling his story. So it was just a really beautiful mix of the clinical side and the patient side of osseointegration. The aperture site, some people call it a stoma, but I prefer to call it an aperture when it's done with the Oprah style. So guys, if we didn't have a chance to see this last week's show, I would highly encourage you to go do so. Lots of great visuals. We were able to put a lot of good pictures up there to really, present and Dr. Forsberg answering questions galore. So really great show. But yeah, the day after that, I was just kind of, it's pretty dead. So guys, for those of you, I have been a little bit late in answering emails, and I do apologize for that. I'm trying to catch up on everything this tonight and catch up on all of those questions. I'm Johnny V. Johnny V, it's been a while since I've seen you on the show, man. It is good to see you. And we've got Jerry on board from Arizona, Carol walking out coffee, Bonnie coming in from snowy Tennessee. Let's see, we got Tracy. My goodness, darling, it's been a while since I've seen you here. It is good to see you. Good to see you. All right, we got Tracy there. We got Harsh coming in from Richmond, Virginia. There's Harsh. We got Ashley. There's my school teacher right there. Snowy Middle Tennessee. Ashley, I hope you brought me one of your random questions because I've missed having them. Just saying. Yeah, Glenn's missing the hot seat already, but I know he's sitting back, tipping back something easy to drink and relax a little bit more tonight. Man, Glenn, it was awesome having you on the show. Guys, so I just got to brag a little bit about Glenn. He is a saint. He is a school teacher and football coach, and truly his story is just a cool story. It's a cool story. It's interesting, just hearing his life before amputation, the events leading up to his amputation, which were, extraordinary, and then how he came to finding osseointegration and allowing him to get back to his life as a high school teacher and football coach, guys. Football coach. That's a active lifestyle right there. We got Shirley coming in from Arizona. All right, guys, we got, oh, I have an Instagram channel. I cannot ignore my Instagram, folks. Got a lot of people jumping on board. Greg, man, it's good to see you. I hope you're sticking around. We got Kathy, Bookcase Pro. We got Bonnie Jane Baird. We got another Bookcase Pro, Nellie Ruiz joining in. We got Chuck on board as well. We've got Valerie on board. Hola, bienvenida, Valerie. We got Ashley, Jamie. We got a whole lot of people on Instagram popping on board. So, guys, welcome. For those of you who are on Instagram, I am switching screens back and forth, but please feel free to post your questions into the comment section. We should get this thing officially started. Those of you who are joining me for the first time, welcome. My name is Kosi Belloso. I am a physical therapist here in Tampa, Florida. I've been a PT now for a little over 23 years. My passion is working with the amputee and limb loss community, and going on 7 years of broadcasting the Kosi Talk Show. And I look back and I'm like, we have listeners tonight, just even tonight, from all around the United States, Canada. We got Carl in from Taiwan. We've got someone listening in from Mexico. And those are just the people that I see right here. So guys, welcome. Let's get this show started. Cheers to those of you. Tracy says she's getting her new leg and foot tomorrow from Ronnie in Chattanooga. I am so glad that you are with Ronnie, Tracy. And Tracy, I am actually going to be in Chattanooga in September. So this is also kind of a PSA for my clinicians. I will be given a continuing education course, CEU course, for physical therapists on the comprehensive care of the amputee. It is going to be 10-hour course, guys. I'm going to be talking for 10 hours. Y'all think I talk a lot on a Wednesday night? Whoo, right? So it's a 10-hour continuing ed course. We will be obtaining credits from the Tennessee State Board. So for those of you who are physical therapists, occupational therapists, and even prosthetists, prosthetists can join in the fun as well. We will be sending out details for registration about that on the line. All right, we got Johnson from San Diego. We got Randy coming in from San Diego as well. Mark coming in. Hey, Mark, I don't think I've seen your name here before, so welcome. Let's see. Shirley asks, right off the bat, is it normal for bone to hurt after an above-the-knee amputation? Okay. Can you give me a little bit more details on this, Shirley? When you say that you have pain in the bone, do you mean when you are putting weight into your socket? Does it mean when you are at rest that you are having bone pain? Can you give me some more details there? Eric says, I will be the guinea pig. Yes, Eric, you're going to be my guinea pig again, otherwise known as my amputee model at that course. Christy, I hope I'm unfrozen now. So Shirley, go ahead and please put that information in the comments section. It might help me answer your question a little bit better. In the meantime, I've got Ashley. There's her random question. I got the OSER ProFlex Terra today. Should I go now for gait retraining, or do you think I could wait until summer for my annual tune-up? Ha, ha, ha. Girl, let me tell you, one of my other patients, if you guys saw the video I posted last week with my professional ballroom dancer, Raphael. So he's one of my someone I'm helping out right now. We went to go play at OSER he got to try those ProFlex Terras. Guys, it is worth the hype. I mean, I've been hearing a lot about this foot, about how it can make you leap tall buildings in a single bound and all that kind of stuff. He put those feet on, and mind you, his sockets at that particular moment, his sockets need to be replaced, right? Like his sockets are not fitting well, but we're just like, okay, let's just put the foot on. Let's just see what happens. And I did a few dance steps with him. And as his partner, I could tell the difference between the foot he was wearing prior to that and these feet. And he was like Tigger. He was bouncing all over the place with these feet. So these really do kind of live up to the hype. So I'm curious to see long-term use, what he's going to think of those feet. As for your gait training, Ashley, you are a very experienced amputee. You are also a very active amputee. My recommendation to you, and again, whatever policy your physical therapist has, have someone take a video of you walking in the forward plane, from behind, and from the side. And this is usually what I tell my patients as well. Patients of mine that I've discharged because we met all their goals, but perhaps they have a new knee, a new foot, a new socket. I'll just tell them, hey, you know what, guys, send me a video, not a clear video of you walking, and I'll take a look. And if you see that you're starting to present with some gait deviations that, then I'll have them come in and work those out. Usually it's when someone gets a new knee That's usually when I see a big change in their gait cycle, that they might be doing something differently and they have to learn how to use the brand new knee, especially if they're going from a mechanical knee to a microprocessor knee to a motor driven knee, whatever the case may be. That's usually where I see that kind of an impact. Or if the person had like a huge overhaul on their socket, like their previous socket was like no bueno, and they had a completely overhaul redesign on their socket. Okay. But quickest way, especially if you are an experienced amputee, right? You're an experienced amputee, you've had gait training and you just had a change in your componentry, talk to your therapist, see what they want you to do. But I usually just say, take a quick video, side view, front view, back view. Let me see how you're walking, and then you go from there. Sherry said, "Oh, hey, there's, oh my gosh, Sherry, I haven't seen you in a while. It's good. I'm seeing a lot of folks here I haven't seen in a while. I really appreciate that, guys." Let's see. We got Cindy Price coming in from frozen Eastern North Carolina, drinking her Starry Soda. "I'd like to ask a question about my prosthetist. I've not clicked with him as I've heard I should, and I've had my trial leg for 5 months, and it has never not hurt. I go often for adjustments, but it just changes where it hurts. He plans to start casting for definitive leg in March. I've been considering seeing someone else who several have recommended. I should do this before he starts the casting. The guy I have was chosen by the hospital. I had no say. I just don't know what to do, but I do not want to get on this and walk. And I do want to get on with this and walk pain-free." Cindy, you are touching upon several things that I really, really strongly advocate for on this show. So thank you for bringing this up, because I do have a lot of new amputees listening in tonight and they need to hear this. Okay. Here in the United States, oftentimes you'll have somebody come to see you while you're in the hospital. It could be a prosthetist. It could be a representative of the prosthetist clinic. Okay. Is there something wrong with that? No, because a lot of times you're there in the hospital, you just had your leg amputated, you don't know where to start, and you need to start building resources, okay? And a lot of times these prosthetists that go to the hospital, they're good people, right? They're good prosthetists, they're good clinicians, but you don't have a way of knowing that, right? Especially if the surgeon is telling you, "Hey, I have this guy or this gal here that I work with who can make your leg, here you go," right? And, as a patient, you're just sitting there trying to figure out which way is up, and you're gonna take the recommendation of your surgeon, right? It totally makes sense, right? But unfortunately, sometimes it's not the right fit. Sometimes it's not the right prosthetist, okay? And a lot of folks don't understand that they don't have to go to the prosthetist that their surgeon is sending them to, okay? A surgeon can make recommendations. Yes. Okay. A surgeon can make recommendations for a prosthetist, for a physical therapist, but a surgeon cannot mandate you must go see this prosthetist. It's not allowed. Okay. And it's something that as a patient, you have to understand this, and you have to understand what your patient rights are. Okay. Now, should you maybe start with the prosthetist that your surgeon recommends? Sure. Okay. Especially if you don't have any connections with anybody else in the amputee community. You got to start somewhere, right? But what I like to recommend to folks is, if you're able to, ask around. Okay. It's one of the things about social media that I do like, is that you can get a lot of word of mouth recommendations. And I think, Cindy, you're doing the right thing by looking for someone who's had a lot of word of mouth referrals, right? One of my colleagues, he jokes around and he says, "Your business is built in the waiting room." And what he meant by that is, in the waiting room, when patients are talking to each other, that's where you really find out if the doctor or the physical therapist or the prosthetist is good or not, right? Your practice is built in the waiting room, and it's very true. Okay, guys, the majority of people who come to see me, it's from word of mouth. It's from word of mouth. Okay. I very rarely have a referral from a surgeon or a prosthetist, not because of it, but that's how I have built my credibility in the community, is working well with my patients. Okay. So Cindy, in your case, getting a second, I absolutely recommend it. It's been 5 months. And if basically the pain is just going from one place to the other, something's not working. Okay, something's not working. Is it the skill of the prosthetist? Is it the particular design that they chose for your socket? Is it because you perhaps need to go see physical therapy to strengthen muscles to have stability when you are in the socket? Because that's another big thing people don't realize, especially my above the knee amputees, right? If certain muscles are weak, you are not going to be stable in your socket and it's going to cause pain, right? And we can get into those details a little bit later, okay? But Cindy, when you get to that, 5 month mark, you should kind of hopefully be seeing a little bit of progress, all right? And what you certainly do not want is you do not want the prosthetist to cast that final definitive socket if you're still having pain in the check socket, right? Because once it's a definitive socket, it's definitive, right? So I think you are correct in wanting to get a second opinion, okay? And again, in getting that second opinion, you're not saying goodbye to the original prosthetist. You're just seeing from a different lens. And it could be that the second prosthetist will say, you know what? Your prosthetist is going through the right steps. It's just going to take a little bit of time to get you to that right place. Or that second prosthetist is going to say, look, this is not going to work. This is the direction you need to head in. Okay. And again, you're hitting upon a lot of key features there, Cindy, that, there's pain, and there should never be any kind of pain when you are wearing a socket. Getting used to a socket can be uncomfortable, and it will be uncomfortable, and there's going to be discomfort, but discomfort is different from pain. Okay. There should not be pain. Okay. So yes. And then Cindy, I am going to advocate, please go, if you're not already doing so, go see a physical therapist. Okay. It's a 2-part series. You can't have one without the other. It's peanut butter and jelly. You need the prosthetist and you need the physical therapist if you want to walk successfully and pain-free. Yes. Okay. Cindy, I have a homework assignment for you now. Okay. I'm going to type in my email address, and I want you to keep me posted on what happens. Okay. A lot of you who send me your text messages and your questions and your things like that, I always like to hear the follow-up, because I give advice and I try to point you all in the right direction. And then I'm sitting there going, did it work? What happened? So guys, there's my email address. For those of you who are also new to the show, you are welcome. In fact, I highly encourage you to send me your questions to this email address anywhere on any of my social media platforms as well. This show is for you, and it's to answer your questions. All right, let's go. What's next? What's next? What's next? Oh boy, lots of comments coming in. I love it when you guys put in lots of comments. Okay. Hey, Sean, what's going on, man? Okay, so Shirley says, going back to Shirley and bone painted, she says, I have no socket. It's when I get up from the couch or walking with my crutches. Okay, so Shirley, I think it's not normal. No. I mean, you asked if it's normal to have bone pain after an above the knee amputation. I mean, if you're talking about the first month or two after the surgery, then yes, there's going to be pain in that bone, especially if it was a revision or it was the primary amputation, right? If you're not even wearing a socket and it's still hurting after that first month or so, you need to get that checked out. Okay. Bone pain can, first of all, is it really bone pain, or is it coming from somewhere near the bone and referring to the bone? But no, having just bone pain when you're up and walking with crutches and you're not even wearing a prosthesis or anything like that, that's not normal. That's not normal. And you should get it checked out. Okay. Marianne is saying South Dakota here and -8 degrees. Holy smokes. Yeah, Jill, that was a fun video. I gotta tell you something, guys. It was, back when I was young, I used to love ballroom dancing and swing dancing, and it was a wonderful stress relief. For those of you who were, as old farts like me, you might remember the swing revival with the Gap commercial. So it was something I really enjoyed doing. So when Raphael called me up and said, I'm a ballroom dance instructor, can you help me? And it's like, oh man, looking forward to it. So we've been having a lot of fun with treatments and also getting him back into ballroom dancing. He's doing a phenomenal job. Ashley says, I've had it for 6 hours and I'm loving it. I know that Terrafoot is quite impressive, quite impressive. Mark says, sorry, I'm from Florida and above the knee, wanting to know how the socket should fit properly. It's a very good question, Mark. Okay, so there's different forms of the socket, right? For the above the knee socket, and I think I have, you know what? I have one here, so I can actually kind of sort of demonstrate a little bit. Okay, so here's pretty standard above the knee socket. In this case, it is a right-sided one. Okay, so when it comes to um, an above the knee socket or any socket, nowadays most of them are total contact sockets. So they're meant total surface bearing, which means it distributes the weight throughout all the soft tissues and the residual limb. Okay. So when it comes to putting your socket on, Mark, do you know if you have a sub-ischial socket or if you have an ischial containment? And if you don't know which one you have, don't worry about it. It's okay. Okay, the fit of the socket should be like a very snug hug. Okay, so it shouldn't be too tight. It should not be strangling your residual limb, and obviously, it should not have movement. Right. The goal of the above the knee socket is to try to stabilize the residual femur. Okay. So, Mark, allow me to introduce you to Bob. He is my um, reluctant and somewhat snarky model. Okay. So, when you have an above the knee amputation, the goal, okay, is to take this residual bone that's flip flopping around in your soft tissue and to stabilize it back into its position where it's angled in just a little bit. So, that's the goal of the socket, of the above the knee socket. And it can be a little bit tricky. Some prosthetists kind of, you know, compare it to trying to stabilize a popsicle stick in a bowl full of jello, right? So you're having to manipulate that soft tissue to try to stabilize everything. Okay, so that is the goal of the socket. Now, there are different forms of the socket. Some of the sockets that are called ischial containment, where it takes your butt bone and it puts it into the socket, okay? And it brings the trim line of the socket. Bob's not very stable. Um, Brings the trim line of the socket kind of up into the groin area. And the point of that is to, again, stabilize that femur and putting pressures at certain points so that it's stabilized at the top and then stabilized at the bottom. Okay. And then your prosthetist is going to use methods of suspension to help hold all of that onto your limb. Okay. So, Mark, if you don't mind, if you don't mind telling us, how does your socket feel when you put it on? See, Matthew's got his hazelnut coffee. Hey there, Jeff. Good to see you, man. Jeff, if you want to chime in, Jeff is one of our prosthetists that watches the show regularly. So, Jeff, if you want to chime in a little bit and give Mark some tips right there, that'd be awesome. Jeff is also echoing patient's choice for Cindy. Hey there, Andre and Tatiana. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, Matthew, I agree that having an advocate at your side as an amputee. Currently, the main one I recommend is the Certified Visitor Program with the Amputee Coalition. So they have the amputees that have undergone very formalized training to go out in the community to basically help provide, coaching, for lack of a better word, to provide that support to new amputees as they are just kind of making their way through that recovery process. Okay. Haha, thank you, Dave. Jeff is also echoing, asking other amputees who they use and why do they like them. Let's see, kind of scrolling through. Let's see, Susan says, I fought my insurance company fiercely to see an out of network provider. I would not take no for an answer. It was exhausting, but I won, and I now receive the most amazing care. And guys, there was actually a question here. So we're going to go ahead and just go to this question that was sent in to me through the texting service. Earl sent in the question, what do I do if I can't find a physical therapist in my insurance network that is qualified to work with amputees? All right, so guys, just so for those of you who don't know, I do have a practice here in Tampa. It's exclusively for working with amputees as an outpatient practice. I am an out-of-network practice, meaning my practice does not accept insurance. So it is a cash-based practice. And I did that for many, many reasons. For many years, I worked in insurance-based hospitals, clinics, home health agencies, nursing homes, this and that and the other. And I realized that when I wanted to open up my own practice for several different reasons, working with insurance was just not going to allow me to deliver the quality of care that I wanted to deliver for my patients. Okay. When it comes to first of all, finding a physical therapist that has amputee experience. Okay, that's the hard part. Once you find that PT, guys, do whatever it is you have to do to go see them. Okay, especially if they are in your area. And again, when I talk to folks and I talk about their recovery process, I see it as an investment in their health. Okay, so fight your insurance. Go there first. And guys, I am by no means an expert on insurance and reimbursement. Insurance reimbursement. It is something that I am woefully out of my scope with that. But I've seen folks like Susan. I've seen folks like Julie Conley that they have gone up the ranks until they got what they needed from their insurance. And in your cases, guys, it's not hard to show and to demonstrate the lack of specialized physical therapists out there for amputees. It really isn't that difficult to show this. Okay. So if you can show that to your insurance company and say, these physical therapists, and here's another trick, and he is really kind of getting into the weeds, but you should go this route. If your insurance company is telling you, well, you should go to this clinic, they say that they see amputees, then go to that clinic and ask those therapists flat out, do you work with amputees? How many amputees a year do you see? And if in fact they do, then great. You've got the clinic you want. But if they're saying no, we really don't work with amputees, then take that back to the insurance company and say they don't. They don't specialize in amputee care. Okay. So if you want to go the insurance route and go head to head with the insurance company, go that way. A lot of folks who come to see me, they don't because they're tired of trying to fight their insurance companies and not get anywhere with them, or they get very minimal visits. They'll get one or two visits and then be discharged, right? So, look for the physical therapist, even if they are a cash pay practice. Most of the time, these physical therapists will work with you. Some of my patients, they can only come see me once a week. Some of my patients will see me once every 2 weeks. Okay. Their progress might be a little bit slower than someone who's coming to see me 2 times a week, but they're still making progress. Okay. And because of the fact that I'm not bound by the rules of insurance, I have much more one-on-one care with my patients. I spend an hour, sometimes a lot more than that, one-on-one the entire time with my patients. So I'm able to do a lot more in that hour than if I were working in an insurance-based clinic where I have to see 3, 4, 5 patients an hour at the same time. Okay. So, for those of you who are looking for that therapist and you're kind of being stopped by, oh, my insurance, think outside the box. Okay. And then have a conversation. If you find that, like I said, the hardest part is finding the physical therapist who has experience working with amputees. Okay. Once you find that person, figure out how you're going to go see them. And guys, as time goes on, we are growing. Okay. It's not to say that as specialists, we're not growing. I am seeing growth in my profession, and I'm seeing more younger graduates want to go into the field of amputee care. Okay, so many of you have asked me, and I go hunting around until I find someone who's somewhere near your zip code. Okay, so that's my don't give up mentality and keep pursuing it. Don't let the insurance be the one to tell you you can't receive the care that you need for physical therapy. Matthew asks, with the rarity of amputee PTs, have you ever thought of teaching those PTs that want to be amputee specialists? I think your knowledge is great and can help the community even more. Thank you. And yes, I actually love to teach. I love teaching. Last year, sorry guys, it's like really getting warm in here. Last year, I had the honor of speaking and teaching at the International Forum for Amputees in Krakow, Poland. And it was just the most wonderful experience. And the course I developed there, I've expanded even further. So I've developed a course that is the comprehensive care of the amputee. And I'm very, very proud of that course. And it's something that I will hopefully be teaching. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be teaching in Chattanooga at Ronnie Dixon's clinic. I'll be teaching this course to physical therapists there. In April, I will be teaching to Brooks Rehab clinicians in Jacksonville, Florida. All of the Florida Brooks Rehab are going to be going to this particular course that I'll be giving, and there's a couple of other places that are also asking about the course. So yes, this is something that I finally feel like I'm in a position in my career now where I can have the time and have the knowledge to do a course like this, and I love it. I don't often get to have students because I don't have as many patients in the clinic to supply a student, but I do love connecting with students through the internet and helping teach them as well. So yes, it's something I really enjoy doing. Let's see. Jill says it took me 4 years to find the right socket and prosthetist. Yeah. Um, Jeff is saying if you're in a bunch of socks, and this is going back to Cindy, maybe a new cast needs to be taken. Randy says it also depends on your insurance company and what clinic they have approved to be a choice. I'm going through this right now, real pain. And guys, I'm not going to lie. I know it's expensive, and again, in my personal journey, I had cancer several years ago, and cancer is a very expensive diagnosis. And thankfully, my insurance, it did its job, but there was still quite a bit that my family and I were responsible for. And at every unexpected cost, especially with 4 young kids, my husband and I would look at each other, and God bless my husband, he would immediately say, "This is your health. We're investing in your health, and we're investing in your future. Of course, we're gonna pay for whatever needs to be done, and we will figure out how to make it happen." And that's usually, it I know it's not easy, guys, and I know our healthcare system needs a lot of work. But find those loopholes, find those ways to get through to the insurance company, and then find those physical therapists that are going to be willing to work with you. Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate that. Yes, Sean, I want to hear the progress there because that's one of the ones that I was wondering about. Hey there, Kristen from Michigan. Let's see, we got Steve drinking water as usual from New York. Welcome, Steve. Kristen says, I know I had zero information. I didn't know what direction to go after my amputation. I had to start looking up information myself. Yeah. And guys, on my Instagram channel, I still see you right there. I still see you. And guys, this is one of the reasons I wanted to start this show, is to provide a place where you could hopefully get credible information. And as I've said on the show, if I don't know the answer, I will go and I will find the reliable and credible source and either bring them on the show or relay the answer back to you. Let's see. Mark says, my socket that I have been fitted so far is very tight and not holding me the way that you had just spoke of. I'm trying to tell them it's so tight that they say that I will shrink. So yes and no, Mark. So you are going to shrink. And again, your picture is this big, but you seem like you're on the younger side. And if you are someone who's going to be active, your limb is going to start to shrink a lot. Okay. Sometimes I've seen prosthetists that they build the socket just a little bit on the snug side, anticipating that. It's kind of a Russian roulette scenario. So, if you've had the socket for about a couple of days, I would say, okay, give it about a week and see if you start to shrink. Okay. And in your case, Mark, you should also continue to wear your shrinker when you are not wearing the prosthesis. Okay. So the shrinker was that stretchy garment, which of course mine is not here, that they gave you after surgery, and it basically provides that compression to your residual limb. Okay. So whenever you take off your prosthesis to prevent what we call rebound edema, where all that fluid rushes back into the limb, put your shrinker on. Okay. You want your limb to start shrinking. That's part of the normal process. And again, tight is kind of like a little bit subjective, especially to a new amputee, because up until now, you've never had anything hugging your leg that intimately before for the entire day, right? Like a socket. So it's definitely a strange sensation to have that clamped on to your entire residual limb. So it's like, yes, it has to be snug enough because you don't want movement inside the socket, but you don't want the feeling of being strangled. So it's a lot of communication, Mark, with your prosthetist to understand, yes, this is the level of tight that you should feel versus no, this is surpassing tightness and going into strangling. Another way, Mark, is looking at your skin. Okay. And this is where your prosthetist and your physical therapist should be helping you determine When you take your prosthetic leg off, what does your skin look like? Is the end particularly red and bulbous and angry? Okay. Do you have marks around the residual limb that are not subsiding after about 5 minutes? Things like angry red welts or like circumferential marks like that. Those are kind of indications that the socket might be too tight. Okay. And then the other thing, Mark, and I apologize because I feel like I'm throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you. But the other thing to consider is if you're wearing socks. Okay, and that's a guess and check thing. And I was actually explaining to a new amputee today, a young lady, that the management of limb volume and the management of socks can be a bit frustrating in the beginning. Okay, so if you are wearing socks, do you need to take some of those socks off? Okay. So again, all of these things that you need to communicate this to your prosthetist, and you also need to communicate this to your physical therapist so that they can teach you how to manage this. Okay, so Jeff asked a really good question. What is the total amount of amputee specific education that physical therapists receive in school? And the answer to that is it depends on what school you go to. So, for example, the University of St. Augustine, located here in my backyard, they have an entire semester dedicated to prosthetic and orthotics, and it's taught by Dr. Scott Love, who is a phenomenal physical therapist and who also happens to be an above the knee amputee himself. Down in the University of Miami, they also have somebody there because that's Bob Gately's homeland right there. So we've got a little group of PTs down there. I know up in Maryland, my colleague Michelle also teaches a full semester of prosthetics to her class. In the University of Kentucky, there's another one of my colleagues, Sheila, that she is in charge of teaching prosthetics. So usually when you see the university um, that has a physical therapist specialist living in that area, usually that person is teaching an entire semester. Okay. Now, not all schools are like that. So I'll be honest, I went to Florida International University down in Miami. Fantastic program at that time, 20, it's been a while, 26, 27 years ago when I started PT school. It was a wonderful school. I had wonderful professors. But my amputee lecture, 3 days. That's it. Yeah. And the irony is, here's the irony. It was taught by Curtis Clark. If you've heard that name before on my show, Curtis Clark is the man who trained Bob Gailey. Okay. And he has forgotten more about amputees than I will ever learn. He's long since retired, but he's still an amazing, brilliant mind. And he would come in to do the guest lecture for us. He didn't work for FIU, he worked for the hospital that I eventually worked for. Okay. And he gave us a 3-day lecture, which was a phenomenal lecture, phenomenal lecture. You guys can only imagine the amount of information to care for an amputee in 3 days as a student. Yeah. So fast forward 3 or 4 years, and I'm taking my happy self to work one day, and I'm told, "Hey, Kosi, you're now going to be in the amputee rotation." And I'm sitting there going, "Oh dear Lord, they're finally going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing as a PT with my shiny new license." But lo and behold, who was my senior therapist? Curtis Clark. Right, and I remember him coming to me and saying, "I know you don't remember what you learned in school, so we're gonna go through it all over again." And bless his heart, he gave me an entire education, soup to nuts, on amputee care, and then he sat with me for every single patient, which he did not have to do. Technically, I was already a licensed physical therapist. He could have just thrown me to the wolves, but he took the time and he sat and he trained me. Okay, and that's where I developed a lot of the knowledge that I have, along with working with the prosthetist that was down the hallway as well. Okay, and you'll find, guys, a lot of physical therapists with from my generation, the old ones like me, that we have similar stories like that. That we received minimal education about amputee care in school, but then we were fortunate enough to work for an amputee care center or somebody who was an extremely experienced PT that then taught us everything that we knew. Okay. So it is something that, there is one university here in Florida, which I can't mention the name just yet, but I am in talks with them to be like, hey, can I come and teach your students because they need to learn this material? And there's a lot of students out there that they're excited about this. I'm getting, I feel like in the past 2 or 3 years, I'm getting more messages from PT students, from OT students who are doing their capstone, who are doing their doctorates, that they're interested in learning about amputee care. And I'm excited for that. I really am. So, yeah, as you can tell, guys, I really love education and I love hopefully to play a role in that sometime in the near future. Still looking for that person in Rehoboth Beach. Dave, I gave you the name of someone who's really, really good. And I know she's a little bit of a drive for you, but she's a phenomenal physical therapist, Dave. So think about driving to her. Think about it. Think about it. Um, so Shirley says, I did see the doctor yesterday and told her and said it was normal. Again, Shirley, without seeing you, it's hard for me to say like where's your bone pain coming from. But again, if you're communicating with your doctor, continue to communicate with them. Okay. If the pain is persisting, then communicate this to your doctor. Okay. Bone pain is not something that should be lasting forever as an amputee. That's not normal. No. So if the bone pain is there and it's not improving, it's not getting even just a little bit better, they need to take a look at it. Okay. And you might just need to go back to your doctor and say, hey, you know what? If the doctor told you just give it a month and it's been a month and it's not working, then you need to go back or whatever time frame they may have given you. Oh, good, Matthew. I'm looking forward to it. Oh, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. Motivated one-legger. I love that handle. All right, let's pop over here. Greg, you are awful quiet on Instagram, man, but I see you, man. Miss having you on the show. All right, Tatiana says, Andre is now wearing 8-ply socks and still has a lot of bone pain. It seems the first few steps are always the most painful and then it subsides. So, Tatiana, I'd be curious as to see, like, why is he having bone pain? Okay, and why is it subsiding? Bone pain, or is it perhaps pressure in a different part of the socket? What is going on there? Like, I'd be curious to see, like, why is it that he has it when he first uses the socket and then it goes away? Or is it discomfort? Again, there's a fine line between discomfort and pain. And sometimes the discomfort is there in the first time that you're using the socket because you got to get used to wearing it, right? Sean says, and it helps to have an experienced prosthetist who knows how to maneuver with insurance companies to get what you need. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely. I have this one prosthetist in town that I work with. She is phenomenal. She is just an absolute wealth of knowledge. And I just love working with her and just asking her insurance questions. And just her knowledge is incredible. Emily says, I feel like I need to see two PTs at the same time, one that knows about spina bifida and one that knows about amputees. Yeah, I mean, and again, once upon a time, and I feel like my generation and the generations before me, when we graduated PT school, we had a well-rounded education. Granted, in my case, we only got 3 days of amputee education, so we could have had a little bit more roundedness there. But the kind of training that I got in my clinicals as well really emphasized the ability to work with a variety of pathologies. Okay. And then Emily, you also have to look at, the mindset of many of my colleagues when we graduated PT school. Some of my classmates went directly into orthopedic outpatient care, and that's where they have spent their entire lives. But a lot of us went to work for hospitals that rotated us around different units so that we got a very varied experience level with different pathologies. I used to joke around that every 6 months I was starting my career over again because I would be rotated to a new unit at the hospital. Okay, so I got to work pediatrics, I got to work oncology, cardiac, trauma, burn trauma, wound care, neuro. What else is there? There's more. Infectious disease, mental health unit. I mean, I got to work with a lot of different pathologies, which for me strengthened my ability to work with amputees. Because as Emily, as you just said, you're somebody who has spina bifida and amputee and lymphedema, right? So there's a couple of different things going on there. You know, Hey there, Michelle. There's my girl right there. There's my other colleague right there. Let's see. Cindy says, I've lost 30 pounds since I was first cast, and I begged to be recast. And he said, March, the PT that has been recommended is an amputee himself. Okay, that's kind of neat. I've had 2 4-week sessions at Home Health PT, and I'm looking forward to starting outpatient after having it. Wonderful. I have Medicare and CAMP VA insurance so far, and now out of pocket. Okay. And yes, I know how blessed I am. Answer to sock. I'm wearing 8 to 11 ply. It takes the the socket from bouncing around with your residual leg. So yeah, Cindy, you are definitely due for a new socket. And I get this question a lot, like how many socks is too much socks? Like when you're, at what point of ply do you need to get a new socket? And Jeff, please feel free to chime in on this one. The textbook will tell you 15 ply sock. I hate the textbook, right? It's basically when you start connection with the socket. And in some people, it could be as little as 7 or 8 ply, and they already feel like they're swimming in the socket, or they're rotating, or they're not stable in the socket. And to me, you're kind of saying all these things where you're wearing 8 to 11 ply, and that's how much you need to put on to prevent bruising of your residual limb. Yeah, it's time to get that new socket. Now, guys, that being said, I'm playing Monday morning quarterback here, right? I don't know Cindy's prosthetist. I don't know the rationale behind it. There could be other things. So going back to one of my patients that I have now, his current sockets don't fit. Like, he is swimming in his sockets right now. The prosthetist is aware of it. I'm aware of it. He's aware of it. But we are working right now to work with his insurance to get a certain kind of socket that we want for him. So he has to trudge along with these sockets until we can get him into a new socket. Okay. So there are circumstances like that. And I always like to give a little grace to prosthetists and when I see someone with a socket that's too big. But Cindy, again, I think getting that second opinion, and especially with a prosthetist that is already coming recommended to you by other amputees, go for it. Go for it. Um, Anyone in Rehoboth, Dave, I don't know. Michelle, if you're still on here, I'm trying to get him to come see you. He should come see you. But do you know of anybody in Rehoboth that is an amputee specialist? All right, we got Ron here saying, asking for my wife. She's been an amputee for about 3 years now, so that's pretty bad. Taking gabapentin, oh my goodness, 3 times a day. Is there anything else that she can do? Okay, so I could do like 40 million shows on phantom limb pain, and actually, I have Ron. And Ron, let me encourage you, please. I see that you're watching me from my YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel, I've done several shows and several videos on the nature of phantom limb pain. I even have a video on how to do the mirror box therapy. Okay. So once the show is over, I want you to go and watch some of those videos. Here's the quick thing, the quick ditty on phantom limb pain. First, I ask people, do they understand the difference between phantom limb pain, residual limb pain, and phantom limb sensation? Okay. Phantom limb sensation is when the person can feel their foot, but there's no pain. So they might feel that their foot is resting on something. They might feel like there's something pushing on the foot, like as if they're wearing a shoe. They even might feel a little bit of itchiness, but there's no pain. Phantom pain, that's when you have exactly that. It's the pain in the foot that used to be there, or the leg that used to be there. Stabbing, burning, tearing, crushing, electrical, all sorts of horrific adjectives that I can use to describe this pain. Okay. Then you have residual limb pain. So this is pain that is coming from the limb itself. Okay. And the reason why I like to make these distinctions is because sometimes something in the residual limb is what is causing the phantom pain, specifically bone spurs and neuromas. Okay. And guys, I don't have any fancy literature that I can quote for you from this. This is just me with my 23 years of experience. Okay. So sometimes, not all times, sometimes the phantom limb pain is actually being caused by a neuroma or bone spur or even scar tissue in the residual limb itself. Okay. So the reason why I'm kind of harping on this is because it is so important to understand what is causing the pain, because then you can hopefully address it better. Okay, unfortunately, a lot of times I do hear about amputees who go to their doctors and say, Doc, I'm having all this phantom limb pain. I can't get through my day. It's horrific. And the doctor will give them gabapentin, which is a very, very strong medication, right? And 3 times a day, that's a lot of gabapentin, right? So this is where I just say, okay, let's see if we can find what is the root cause of this. Is this something that is physical and tangible in the residual limb? Is it coming from the lumbar spine? Okay. Or is it what I call the true phantom pain, where it's just the neuroplasticity, the way the brain has kind of remodeled and tried to interpret what is going on with that residual limb that results in phantom pain. Okay. Now, I believe in the use of conservative methods when it comes to phantom limb pain. I believe in mirror box therapy, virtual reality, meditation. I believe in dry needling. I think that's something that's kind of coming up in the ranks, exploring things like acupuncture. There's a lot of things dietary from a dietary standpoint that I believe that you can try. And again, I like these conservative methods because for the most part, it doesn't hurt to try. You know what I mean? And I find that if people are consistent with some of these conservative methods, they can start to feel some relief. It may not take away all the phantom limb pain, and everybody is completely different with this, but it can start to help. Okay. And then when you have to bring in the big guns, some of the pharmaceuticals, some of the heavy duty ones like gabapentin, the goal is to potentially use some of the conservative methods to just kind of bring down that pain level a little bit so that you can slowly decrease that medication under the supervision of the doctor. Okay, again, let me stress the importance of that. People who are on these medications, if they want to start to come off of them, they need to do it through the supervision of the doctor because you don't want to have any bad side effects that can happen cold turkey. So I always like to preface that. Okay. So Ron, I would encourage you. That's kind of my like umbrella speech for phantom limb pain, and I would encourage you um, look at the particular video. It was from a couple of years ago, but I did mirror box therapy for the first time with one of my patients. Not me for the first time. I did it for my patient for the first time, and it was really kind of incredible to see his reaction. Started doing the mirror box therapy. So hopefully that can kind of give you a start right there. All right, we got Jeff says great explanation. So it really comes down to patients interviewing their PTs. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the same way I tell people, when you go to choose your prosthetist, interview your prosthetist, you should also be interviewing your physical therapist. Absolutely. Guys, there's people in my community. I live in a lovely little community, and sometimes people from my community, specifically my church, they know I'm a physical therapist, and they'll come and ask me, "Hey, do you treat such and such thing? Can you treat me for this?" And they'll interview me and what is your experience with treating this or this or that or this or that? And sometimes I'll have to say, guys, I haven't treated that particular pathology in 15 years. It's been 15 years since I've treated this particular pathology. I'm not the person you should be going to, but allow me to refer you to my colleague who is phenomenal with this particular pathology. Okay. I expect people who want to become my patient to interview me. Most of my patients find me through the show, word of mouth, and we have a conversation before they even step foot in my because they're asking, how is it that you know about amputees? What has been your experience? How many amputees have you seen in your career? Have you ever worked with an above the knee? Have you ever worked with a bilateral amputee? Have you worked with this kind of knee? These are questions that you should be asking. And a physical therapist or a prosthetist who doesn't want to take 5 minutes of their time to answer some very simple questions like this. Next. Oh, Glenn, I would love Glenn. That would be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun to go into the high school classroom and teach a little bit there. I've always actually it's one of those things like maybe once my kids are like grown out of high school, out of college, which is going to be a little while for me. Teaching like high school anatomy and physiology, like that's something I've kind of always wanted to do as well. Like, how fun would that be? Okay. Anyways, Susan says, when I guest lecture, I always encourage students to consider working with amputees. Yeah. Yes. Although sometimes it's kind of cool to be like, yeah, I'm an amputee PT unicorn, but at the same time, I'm like, it's lonely. I need some more colleagues to play with. So yes, we do need more physical therapists, and we also need more occupational therapists to specialize with amputees. Let's see. Jim asks, how has physical therapy adjusted to include new technologies such as power knee for amputees? Adjusted, well, I guess in the sense of just education. I'm still learning about the technology. It's interesting. I think probably like the 10-hour course that I developed, 3 of those hours is spent on prosthetics and alignment alone. And that probably took me the longest to put together. Um, First of all, there's just so much to talk about in prosthetics and how do you put it into one lecture. But then how to explain it in a way that will be relevant with all the new technology as it keeps coming out. And it's just like mind blowing to me. Like I walked into Oster and they're like, "Oh, we now have this new knee and we have this new foot and we have this new this," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I was just finally getting the hang of some of your other stuff that had just come out, right?" And really learning not necessarily how to memorize all the new technology as it comes out because that's impossible, but learning how to analyze the technology and by its function. And that's kind of how I look at it. That's like the lens I look at it through. So when new technology comes out, with you guys have heard my foot lecture, like prosthetic feet lecture, prosthetic feet 101. Who's heard that lecture before? Raise hand, show of hands in the comment section. How many of you guys have heard my prosthetic feet 101 talk? I've given it like 25 different times at least on the show alone, right? Show of hands, show of hands. Okay. So when I talk to you guys about prosthetic feet, I'm not talking to you guys about the names of the feet and this, that, and the other, or the companies or the manufacturers. I'm talking to you about the function of the foot. Okay. And that's also how I approach knees, how I approach suspension systems, how I approach socket design is the function, what it's meant to do. So that way, when new technology comes into play, okay, then it's a matter of saying, okay, what is the function of this new piece of technology? Uh, let's see. No, my pleasure, Mark. And honestly, that's what this show is for. That's what the show is for. Guys, I haven't really answered any of the questions that people have sent in. And I know the title of tonight's show is supposed to be special considerations for bilateral amputees. So I feel like I should at least touch upon that. Because if not, it's just like, okay, that was just a fake title. I don't know. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about special considerations for bilateral amputees. And guys, one of the reasons is I've been getting questions about it lately, and also I have someone who is new to the world of amputees. She recently became an amputee, a bilateral amputee, and I believe she's watching this evening. So, welcome to this individual. And also, hopefully they will keep coming back to watch the show and learn from you guys as well. So considerations. Probably one of the biggest considerations for someone who is an above the knee amputee, okay, is the pre-training that happens before the prehab, before your legs are even issued. Okay. For bilateral above the knees, I'm a huge proponent of stubby training. Okay. And stubby is basically when the prosthetist will construct the socket and then put, it looks like a goat foot. Mark, you need to send me one because I talk about your sidekicks foot all the time. I still don't have one here that I can show off. Okay, it's a little foot that goes underneath the socket. Okay, so the person just learns how to walk like this. Okay, they're closer to the ground. They get the chance to develop their strength, balance. They also get to develop their stamina because there's a lot of energy expenditure as a bilateral amputee. Okay, especially bilateral above the knee amputee. Okay. So once they become secure in their mobility with stubbies, then they can progress to the full length prosthesis. Okay. Um, and here's the dirty little secret when it comes to gait training with someone who's a bilateral, I approach it very, very similarly as I do to a unilateral. Okay. The importance is in the foundational gait training, right? And those of you who've been watching my show, those of you who have been my patients and have been in my clinic, those of you who have been my amputee victim models whenever I'm at a conference, right? It's all about that foundational gait training, okay? And it applies to a unilateral, but especially so to a bilateral amputee. And taking the time to do those foundational strategies to develop the proprioception, to develop that what we call neuromuscular re-education, meaning your muscle groups learning how to wake up and how to work together, right? Glutes, working with hamstrings, working with quads, working with your core. Okay. All of that learning to work together. Okay. A lot of times with my unilateral amputees, they'll pop their leg on and start zipping up and down the parallel bars without doing that foundational gait work, right? And then when they get out of the parallel bars, they're a hot mess and they don't know why. Okay. With bilaterals, you can't do that. You got to put the foundational gait work in, right? You have to do it. Okay. So that's one of the biggest things right there with that. Socket comfort, I mean, it's basically all of the same things that you would consider for someone who's a unilateral amputee, but just on a whole 'nother level. And you just even more so. Everything with that socket has to be on point. The fit of the socket, the comfort of the socket, the stability of the socket has to be absolutely on point. Learning your prosthesis, right? Especially for my above the knees, right? Learning how that prosthesis works. How is that knee activated? Okay, for things like how do you go from sit to standing, right? How are you going to get your knee to bend when it's time to take a step? Okay, you have to know more about your prosthesis than someone who's a unilateral. I mean, the unilateral person needs to know their prosthesis too. They're not supposed to get off scot free, but you really more so. Okay, for my bilateral below the knees, they're actually I'm not gonna say it's easy to gait train, but it is much easier to do gait training with bilateral below the knee than it is a unilateral above the knee. Isn't that interesting? And I've actually heard this comment from some of my friends who are above the knee amputees that they said, if we had a choice, we would rather be a bilateral below the knee than a unilateral above the knee. Okay, because you have the advantage of that knee joint, right? So someone who's a bilateral below the knee, they actually can gain quite a bit of really good function with the right training and the right sockets and everything like that because they have both of their anatomical needs. Okay, so that's one thing right there. Someone who is a mixed, so someone who is a unilateral, one side above the knee and one side below the knee. Okay, usually I focus a lot of my effort on the above the knee side, and the below the knee side is kind of just almost along for the ride. The below the knee side usually is their stronger leg, and as we're focused on gait training and teaching them how to use the above the knee side, the below the knee just kind of picks up the slack and comes along, and I usually just have to do tweaks on the below the knee side. Okay, so those are kind of like the bilateral, just quick, some special considerations there. Okay. I am sorry if I keep cutting out, Jerry Ann. Is anything else having that problem with me? Am I cutting out with my audio? Sorry. Sorry, guys. I'm seeing Michelle. I'm gonna keep plugging you. I'm just saying. I'm gonna keep plugging you. Let's see. Steve says, I don't know what I just hit there. Steve says, speaking of mirrors, I use a mirror when I'm putting on my socks and my sleeve, and it helps line up the holes. That's a good hack. Matthew says to Cindy, supply and weight loss are considered medical necessity. Additionally, safety issues from not fitting well. Make sure your doctor puts all that in his notes to help with approving the new socket. Best of luck. Yeah, Cindy, honestly, getting approval for that new socket should be kind of a home run. That there shouldn't be it shouldn't be an issue for your prosthetist and doctor to be able to justify medical necessity for a new socket there. Okay. So Michelle says that she's having good success as a physical therapist using vibration therapy for managing phantom limb pain. That's another one of those conservative methods, guys, is distraction. So using a TENS unit, using vibration therapy, right? Where you're basically telling the brain, look over here, focus on this so that you're not focusing on the phantom pain. And I actually, my personal favorite, I don't have a therapy. I need to get one. I don't have a therapy massage gun. But my favorite combination is using a mirror with a TENS unit. So using the mirror and positioning the person there, and the unit on the residual limb, and then moving it around. Sometimes I'll even put it on the sound limb. So if the person is feeling phantom pain on their what used to be their big toe, their where there used to be. Sometimes I'll put it on their sound go in that same spot and try that and just do various exercises box and moving the tense unit around. So again, it's a matter of how can we distract the brain? How can we distract the brain? Okay, let's see. Marianne says I've been wearing my stubbies for 2 years now. And the other thing I really like about the stubbies, and I don't know if Jeffrey's on tonight, but he's a wonderful example of this. Sometimes with stubbies, even for those of you who go on to use long length prosthesis and you become functional and you walk, some people like using the stubbies for being around the house because it's just a little bit easier for them to maneuver around their home. The one example that comes to mind is when Jeffrey posted a picture of himself mowing the lawn, mowing his own lawn. And it's a lot easier for him to do that going over uneven terrain his stubbies. So it's nice to have that those different choices there. John says, I had a visit with my prosthetist yesterday because of my issues in mobility and flexibility. These issues have kept me out of the gym for quite some time. Mike maxed out some adjustments and added more cushion in the base of my prosthetic. It's very discouraging not to be able to do my exercise routine. Yeah. Speaking of which, here's one question from Liz. She says, do you or your above the knee runners or walkers have some hints on keeping their liners up so their prosthesis doesn't rub their leg? Jeff, I hope you're still on. Okay. So here's the deal. I get this question a lot, like what happens, you've got, especially from my well, both above the knee and below the knee, the edge of their liner just kind of rolling down on them throughout the day. So this is something that we run into, especially in Florida with the heat and humidity and the sweat. So the first thing I usually look at is your liner fitting properly, right? Is the liner fitting properly? So a lot of times people may not have a beautiful cylindrical limb like this. This is like the ideal shape on a below the knee is a nice cylinder, right? The ideal shape on an above the knee is a little bit more conical shape. But a lot of people don't have that nice, perfect cylinder. Some people will be very narrow at the bottom and then super wide at the top, right? Especially as the residual limb starts to shrink. But for example, the thigh muscle might still be bigger, right? So you have a really big discrepancy and it can be tricky with fitting a liner. Okay. So my understanding is the first thing is making sure that the liner is fit properly. Okay, is the liner stretched out? If you're a runner, it means that your liner is getting abused a lot more than usual, right? So you might actually be wearing out your liner a lot faster than someone who just uses it to walk all day long. Okay, so is it worn out? Is it not snug enough? Okay. Now the other side of it is if it's too tight on the top part, that's what's causing it to roll down, okay? In which case, you might have to get a bigger liner. But then the problem is that the bottom part is gonna be too big, okay? So one thing I've seen some of the processors do is they'll put a little distal end cup at the bottom to accommodate that space. Okay, so that's one thing right there. The other thing is, especially for my runners, it's the liquid powder lotion. Vital Fit is a company I really love their products. They have a lot of great products for skin, specifically meant to be used with the prosthesis. My runners use the liquid to powder lotion. So putting that on just kind of helps prevent shearing and friction. And then it just kind of also makes the liner sit a little bit better. Okay, so Emily asks, how much different is it walking with a stubby versus a prosthetic foot? It's quite a bit from to my knowledge, you have 2 basic stubby feet out on the market, and again, I need to see if anything else has come out. It's the basic ones, and they're kinda like they're called goat feet, and they look just like that. It's like a little rectangular kind of goat foot, and then there's one that College Park makes that I love. It's called the Sidekicks foot. It's a little bit of a beefier foot with a great tread on it, and it's also multi-axial, meaning it moves around. So it's better in I like it better because it does give that movement. But compared to a dynamic response foot or an energy storing foot or hydraulic foot, it's not going to give you the same function as these other prosthetic feet will. Stubby feet, again, they're good for training for bilateral amputees. They're also really great for a beach foot, a pool foot, just a foot that you need to kind of get from point A to point B. I've seen it used for rock climbing, which is kind of cool because it allows the person just to put that foot, it's a smaller foot on the ledge. So for things like that. Okay, guys, I see a lot of questions here, and I really need to apologize that I am not going to be able to get to all of these tonight. Here's what I am going to do just to remind you. Um, there is my email address. If I did not get to your question tonight, please, 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 please send it to me to the email, and we will be back next week. And I'm going to continue to answer all the questions that I was not able to answer tonight. But I love it when I have too many questions like this because it means that you guys are sending all your questions. I do love this. So guys, for the rest of the, let's see, I've got a couple more questions. So these questions I will be answering next week. Oh, I'm not talking right now. But in the meantime, please send me to the email and I will get to them for next week. As you can tell, I'm kind of like, oh, it's past my bedtime. All right, guys. So as always, thank you for letting me be a part of your lives this evening, and I will see you guys next week at that time.